Good morning. I'm often asked, how do you build a digital strategy? And my answer is simple. You are too late. It is too late in a world where where IT is so central. It is too late to build a digital strategy. You must build a strategy which embraces digital in every aspect. Simply put, there are no alternatives but to move forward in a digital world. We have no choice. There is no analog strategy anymore. And we must use whatever assets we have available to move forwards. But at the same time, technology, however central it is in the world today, is disappearing. The most significant technologies are the ones that simply disappear and weave themselves into the fabric of our everyday lives. We take them for granted. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It just means we no longer recognize them as individual boxes. The computers that we have grown up with are disappearing. It is not about technology. In a few hundred years, when the history of our time is written from a long-term perspective, it is most likely that the most important thing we see will not be the technology. It will be the change in the human condition. People have choices. Technology has given us choices that we simply never had before. It is not about technology. It is about the impact of technology on people. And we should never forget that. At the same time, we must also remember that there are some things that we as individuals, as organizations, as countries, as governments cannot change. There are macro trends out there that drive the world, that drive the landscape in which we must operate. 7 billion people on the planet. Issues of resource constraints. The ubiquitous nature of technology, not always as ubiquitous as we might like. The mobility of humans, the mobility of capital, social reform. We have seen in the last couple of years how Facebook can bring down governments. We have also seen how it cannot yet run a country. It's not a perfect solution, but it gives people choices they never had before. But understand that basic landscape, those technologies, are only part of it. It is not any single technology. I often find people come to us and say, tell me about the technologies. And they want to look at the silver bullet. Everyone is always hunting for the silver bullet. It is not any one individual technology that will cause problems. It is the combination of those technologies. The technologies conspire together to cause problems. Companies that do not have a digital strategy, that did not have a digital strategy, will fail, have failed. It is perhaps strange to think that Kodak, which had been around for 100 years and was synonymous with photography, owned patents on digital photography, but was unable to make it in and through into the digital world. And there are others. The power of these forces conspiring together, combining together, is changing the digital landscape, is changing the world in which we live. And those organizations that do not understand the complexity and the combination of those forces will face real problems. So let's think about those technology trends. The world we live in is becoming more and more connected. We are facing an unprecedented avalanche in the number of devices that connect and talk to each other, that allow us to talk to each other. They create a myriad of new opportunities and an equally large universe of new threats. The Internet of Things, as it is called, is nothing new necessarily, but it is creating a new landscape where things talk to things, where information grows and is passed around and machines start to make decisions. And we'll talk a little more about that later. We have new technologies like near-field communication, which allow us to make payments, to speed the process, to lubricate the wheels of commerce. And we have augmented reality, bringing together all of these mobile devices with the information such that we now start to see not only the physical world, but the digital world behind it, overlaying the two on each other. And they come together in interesting ways. It is not about machines that talk anymore, it is about the world that is talking. The world is increasingly full of little computers, the building blocks of the digital age. They used to joke that an aircraft was simply a collection of rivets that used to fly in close formation. The modern automobile is a collection of microprocessors that drive in close formation. We need to increasingly add digital technology to our world to take advantage of the way that world communicates. It need not be complex. It could be as simple as the QR barcodes that the city of Monmouth on the Welsh borders has put on just about every building, so that you can go around that city, point your smartphone at a sign, and see what is behind the building. See which department of the local government is there, what their opening hours are, when the next bus is due on a bus stop, or whatever. It is about linking the simple things, the digital world and the physical world together. It doesn't have to be high technology always. It is about using technology to make people's lives easier. It is not only machines that are talking to machines. The way we as individuals interact with computers is equally changing. Some years ago, I wrote and forecast the death of the mouse. And it is true. We have very few mice connected to our computers anymore. We now have touchpads and trackpads and touchscreens and so on. The keyboard is next. The keyboard represents the biggest barrier between ordinary people and technology that exists. My son asked me many years ago, why do they put the keys in this keyboard in such a stupid order? And I explained to him about letter frequency, and I even found a mechanical typewriter for him. And he looked at it and he said, that's very interesting, but why didn't they use a word processor? Technology is the stuff that arrives after you are born. And for him, word processors and computers existed since he was born. The next generation of user interfaces is about gesture, is about voice. It is not about typing on keyboards. We have seen the explosion in media tablets, where keyboard is simply another application. In the same way that voice, which was once the killer application, voice is just another application on the data network today. Media tablets have revolutionized the way ordinary people use and access technology. They are perfect for consuming content. There will still be those who create content for whom a keyboard or some other means of entering text is valuable, but they will become the minority. And we will increasingly talk to our computers, and those computers will increasingly understand what we mean. Natural language, something we have dreamed about for a long time, is coming closer and closer and closer. Human-system interaction, as opposed to human-computer interaction here, human-system interaction is no longer about the device. We have a love affair, an obsession with devices. I now live many miles from London, and I spend a lot of time traveling up to London on the train. And I see people getting onto the train with suitcases, with shopping bags, with their handbags, even with the children. And I've seen them drop suitcases. I've seen them drop their bags. I've even seen them drop their children. I have never yet seen one of them drop their mobile phone. They're clutching that device as though their very life depended on it. And in reality, for many people, that is their life. Their life exists in that mobile device. It contains their friends, it contains their contacts, it contains their schedule, it contains everything. We have a love affair, an obsession with devices, but we will lose that because it is not the device that we care about. It is the ecosystem underneath that. It is everything that that device gives us access to. And once we start realizing that, once we start realizing that it is not the device, but it is the ecosystem, then we start to lose the tyranny of form factor. The fact that a mobile phone has to be a certain size so it fits in our pocket, so it goes between our ear and our mouth, and we can have a new generation of devices. Things that no longer look like mobile phones, but allow us access to the systems and to the information underneath. That opens up a whole new world of possibilities, of wearable computing, of ways of interacting with technology that are simply different, and that allow us to do different things without having to cope with small buttons and small screens and battery life that is too small, and so on. The battle of devices, as Stephen Elop at Nokia found, is not the issue. It is the battle of ecosystems that matters in the future. All of those devices, the machines, the mobiles, are creating information. They're creating a tidal wave of information. And that means we have to start doing things with it. It is human nature to actually categorize, to file, to compartmentalize things, to make sense of them. So we see new trends in analysis, in analytics, in storage. We see the whole big data phenomenon. How do we make sense of this overwhelming avalanche of information? And we use new technologies like in-memory computing and so on to help us do things faster. But let me give you a serious warning here. We are becoming as obsessed with analysis as we have become with devices. It is not about the analysis. We now create vast amounts of information. I would love to know how Eric Schmidt knows that we now create as much information every 2 days as we did from the dawn of civilization to 2003. But the point is simple. We create vast quantities of information and we try to do things with it. But until we use that information to make a better, more informed decision, it is all an interesting academic exercise. The value of data crystallizes out at the point at which it is used to make a better decision. Up until that point, it is all virtual. It's not real. It doesn't matter. It gives us a possibility, but it doesn't deliver real value. The value comes when you make a decision. And one of the big things we will increasingly see is not the decisions we make, but the decisions that the systems make for us. We will move from big data to big decisions. And that will be challenging because there is something inherent in the human condition that says we must be in control, that we are the important bit, that we are the ones who make the decision. And yet we know from decades of academic research that people make very bad decisions. We're very bad at assessing risk, at remembering things. We get tired. We need another cup of coffee in the morning. Ultimately, we will live in a world where machines make a lot more decisions than they do today. And the question of whether that becomes scary or whether it becomes enabling is largely going to be down to us. And then there are new opportunities that arise from digital technology. 3D printing, additive manufacturing perhaps, is a technology that many people have never really come across, or if they have dismissed it as something to produce small plastic toys. 3D printing is probably the single most disruptive technology of the next decade. It has the potential to completely overturn everything that we understand about the manufacturing industry. 3D printing is not about creating little pieces of plastic. 3D printing can create a whole range of objects. It can create metal parts using titanium alloys. Audi uses it to create plastic parts for cars. Aston Martin uses it to create prototype engine blocks, not models, real prototype engine blocks. The most scary thing, and the most interesting one from my point of view, is that there is a research project going on at the moment that links a CT scanner to a 3D printer. They can scan your kidney and print a replica. Now, it doesn't work, but that's simply a matter of time. They say within 10 years, and it'll probably take another 10 years for the legal process to go through, they will be able to print a kidney that works. And think what that does for medicine. 3D printing breaks the rules of manufacturing. It is not about the more you make, everything has to be the same. Every item is different. Every item can be personalized. Every item is unique. Every item is printed where you need it, so it impacts logistics. It impacts a whole range of things. 3D printing is an incredibly disruptive technology, and it is more mainstream than you think. We will see more and more robotics, but it is a short-term, and mobile telepresence is a short-term trend. Robotics will become commonplace. And on the fringes, we are already seeing the next generation of technologies built around organic matter, about organic life forms. So there's a whole range of technologies, but it is actually about what do they do for business. There are new societal drivers for business. Innovation is happening more in the developing world, in the emerging markets, as we used to call them, than it is in the developed world at the moment. There are some very, very interesting things happening. If you want to see the latest in mobile banking, there is no point going to London or Frankfurt or New York. You go to Zimbabwe, you go to Kenya, not noted as financial capitals of the world, but they have very advanced mobile systems, driven by necessity. The rise of the East, the rise of the Middle East particularly, is seeing an increasing importance for Sharia-compliant financing. These things matter to business. The financial crisis over the last few years has cut off the supply of venture capital, and yet things like Kickstarter, crowdfunding, using social to actually fund innovation is becoming important. There is a new economy of innovation, a new innovation economy happening around Kickstarter, around social, around crowdfunding, around crowd everything, that is changing the way small businesses start up and work and grow. And the biggest competitor to large businesses today is not the other big businesses that they're used to competing with. They're suffering exactly the same problems. The biggest competitor to today's large businesses are the small businesses that they don't know anything about. The ones that they've not seen, that are below their radar screen. There are new ways of distributing things like eBay, Etsy, that allow individual organizations immediate access directly to end consumers, allowing those consumers to get involved, and people want to get involved. It is not about the technology, it is about the people. The battle of devices has become a war of ecosystems, or people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. It may sound very cheesy. It is cheesy, perhaps. But it is about how people feel, about the relationship that technology allows individuals to have with other individuals or to have with organizations. People want to get involved. If you do not build an emotional resonance with your customers, with your prospects, with your partners through technology, then as an organization, you will fail. Technology is enabling us to do things. The sorts of things it's enabling us to do are quite astonishing. 3D printing, I go back to that. Shapeways is a service bureau running 3D printers. You no longer actually have to have the 3D printer, but they're becoming increasingly affordable. The Solidoodle device is under $500. And the reason for the lady in the bikini is quite simple. That is a bikini printed on a 3D printer. It is created using a 3D body scan, so it fits perfectly. It is built on a 3D printer, so it is personalized. People now have the opportunity to get involved, to actually participate, even in things like their clothing. To buy unique products, to participate in their design, in their manufacture, and so on. Technology is changing all sorts of industries. There is a very, very interesting blend of art and design and technology and science going on. And just as a final comment, If your digital strategy, as it does for most organizations, revolves around the idea of the internet, then we leave you with this thought. If you think that the internet in 5 years' time will simply be a bigger, faster, more ubiquitous version of what we have today, then I would ask why. What makes you think that? Because the facts do not support that. The internet today is facing serious, significant problems. We are demanding more and more access. We are demanding access all the time. Governments are attempting to deliver universal service, but failing dismally in most cases. Bandwidth is constrained. The telecommunications carriers are struggling to find the investment to provide that bandwidth. The idea of the internet as this freely available, universal, unregulated medium is a complete dream. It is not. The internet, both now and in the future, is driven by three very significant forces. There is the demand for control. Governments want to control the internet to protect us from bad things. We expect our governments to protect us from bad things, to protect against cyber terrorism and criminal activity and intellectual property theft and so on. But at the same time, we have a desire for freedom. We want to be able to access whatever information we want, whenever we want, and talk to everyone anywhere in the world and have access to all of these things without oversight. That sets up a very powerful conflict, which is made more complex by the fact there are now a myriad of organizations that want to make money from the internet, that see the internet as a universal mechanism to deliver content. The drive for profit is very powerful. And those three, you cannot please all of the people all the time. And we have done a lot of work over the last year looking at scenarios for the future. Every one of these scenarios, this idea where profit overwhelms everything else, the pay-as-you-surf scenario, as we call it, every one of these scenarios exists today somewhere in the world. Because there is no single internet. The internet does not exist. Not as a single network. There are 190 or more internets, driven and controlled by the regulations in each individual country. In the United States, if you use Skype, fine. Some functionality is missing on Skype in Canada because it is against the regulations and the laws in Canada. And to use Skype at all in Ethiopia is likely to get you arrested. The internet is not a universal global network. It's simply a collection of networks. And that has a huge significance for organizations that increasingly depend on the internet for their future digital infrastructure. Understanding and anticipating what the internet and how the internet is going to develop is a critical component of your digital strategy. So we would strongly recommend that you start a formalized horizon scanning process, not just for the technology changes, but for everything else as well. The compound trends, how things come together, and the secondary impacts. Use scenario planning. You cannot forecast the future. It is too complicated. Use scenario planning to explore the impact of these trends on your future and understand how that will actually change the way you work in the future. Look not only at the opportunities that arise from these disruptive trends, but look at the risk that someone else will get there first. It is not always about what you do, it is about what someone else does that leaves you playing catch-up. And playing catch-up is not a good place to be. But most of all, focus on the human and the emotional factors. It is challenging. As technology people, as analytical people, we like to think of ourselves as impervious to those emotional reactions. We are not. People do not always behave in a logical and rational manner. Understand and take into account how people react. It is not about the technology, it is about the impact of technology on people. And as Peter Drucker said, when we look back with the benefit of hindsight, it will not be the technology that is most important, it will be the unprecedented change in the human condition. Thank you very much.